coming up on the Lead Ministry Podcast.
Every professional minister, every kids pastor, anybody who is on church staff, challenge you to not let your volunteers out-volunteer you. I think especially if you are being paid by the church to do a job, you've got to look outside of what you're getting paid to do and see where else can I insert myself.
And now your host, Josh Denhart.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Lead Ministry Podcast. I'm excited for today. I got my friend Preston Hocker teed up, and what we're going to talk about today is a little bit off the regular path. We're going to talk about serving, and you're like, oh great, yes, serving, getting other people to serve at church under me. Nope, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you potentially serving outside of your common area at church and serving somebody else outside in the community. It does take some extra effort, but it's very, very special. Preston, good to see you, buddy. Welcome home.
Hey, thanks, man. It's good to be back.
You were in Hawaii for a family thing, and I'm grateful that you're home.
Yeah, I am a routine kind of a guy. I like my routine. I am most comfortable in my routine. I like to get up in the morning, get some word time in, get my workout in. I like my routine. So
order.
Exactly. I like having order. And so, it's good to go be with family and make those memories and get all the pictures and things. That's good to do, but it's also sometimes I feel like I always hit a day. I think it's normally like 4 or 5 days in where I'm like, okay, I'm ready to get back to my routine.
Yeah. Like this idea of a perpetual vacation, probably not so much.
It's not for me.
Yeah.
For me, my wife, she could do it. She could live in an RV and travel around for months at a time.
Sounds painful to me.
Oh,
sounds painful.
Yeah, it's good though. It's good to be back.
That's good. Well, again, grateful that you're here, grateful that you're back. You're such a good dude. And by the way, since we did a podcast together a number of weeks ago, Lead Security is official. It's launched and people are jumping in. I'm super, super grateful for all of the labor that we did in order to get Lead Security up and running. It's good stuff, isn't it?
It is. It's so good. There's a bit of a breath of fresh air now that it's officially been launched, been shot out into the world. But
yes.
I'm really expecting to hear stories of people's lives and communities being blessed, by this course, by the information that's in this course,
and being positively affected by literally the 1,005 hours that each of us put into building this crazy thing.
Yeah, I think we're going to hear some really cool stories of people's lives, kids being rescued,
yes,
being saved because there's this guy that's been in their community for years, and everybody's kind of always looked past what they would just call quirkiness or idiosyncrasies. We've just kind of looked past it because that's who he is. But now all of a sudden people have this new lens to look through, and they're saying, you know what, maybe we need to
dig a little deeper,
another look. We need to give this guy another look. We need to
well, that's all a piece of Lead Security. Please go check that out at leadsecurity.com. It is the most comprehensive, and both Preston and I can categorically say it is a big resource.
It's easily the most comprehensive resource of its kind.
It is. And speaking of serving outside of our areas of normal life, we did that with Lead Security. That's what we're talking about today on the Lead Ministry Podcast, is we're talking about serving outside of our regular roles. So maybe you're a kids pastor, maybe you're a student pastor, maybe you're an executive pastor. And Preston, you happen to wear a lot of different hats at your church. Just share a few of them. I mean, you're preaching tonight, for Pete's sake.
I lead our midweek service.
Yeah.
So I'll be preaching tonight. But, I started ministry. Well, I guess you could say professional ministry, officially being on staff at a church 20 years ago. And I came on as like a part-time youth pastor, and, from there, full-time youth ministry into doing kids ministry. Now I oversee kids ministry, youth ministry, young adult ministry. Doesn't mean I'm attending every one of those events, but it's a lot of
oversight,
leadership development, and oversight. Yeah. So done that. And then I've got a security company. So it kind of just made sense. I saw some holes in our security. And so there was a guy that was leading and doing an all right job, but I saw a lot of holes in our security. And so I just had to throw my hat in there too. I'm not trying to take anybody's jobs away. However, there are certain things, I think if you've got a skill and there's a need, you ought to insert your skill.
That's exactly right. Is. And you've done that quite well. And so watch this. You have, as you've just listed, lots of different roles directly within the church. And it might seem to some people, hey, you're putting in your time, your service quota is filled. You don't need to be serving anyplace else. You're doing all of your serving in the local church, but that doesn't actually, for a dude like you and a dude like me, and maybe some other people who are listening to this, that doesn't actually completely fill our tank sometimes. That we want to find ways to serve outside of our local church and find ways that it's not just directly associated with our job job.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think service and even generosity really ought to be a marker of the believer.
Right.
And I think especially, and I've been in ministry, you've been in ministries for so long as well. Sometimes you see people that come into full-time ministry, like professional ministry, and all of a sudden they forget how to volunteer. They now think, I've got a job description. This is what I do in the church because this is my job description. And I'll say this, challenge every professional minister, every kids pastor, anybody who is on church staff, challenge you to not let your volunteers out volunteer you.
So good.
I think even if, or not even if, especially if you are being paid by the church to do a job, you've got to look outside of what you're getting paid to do and see where else can I insert myself.
Yeah,
because
I think you're right.
We can't let our volunteers out volunteer us.
Not only just out volunteer us, but think about this. You said it so well. We often forget what it's like to volunteer someplace.
Mm-hmm.
Because all we're doing now is we're like, okay, fine. Okay, it's like somebody has a job as a banker. Somebody has a job as a teacher. Somebody has a job as a cashier. And then they serve in addition to that. And they're participating as a volunteer. And so what we're talking about today is, I have my banker job. It happens to be the church. Or you have your banker's job. It's the church. And then out of that shouldn't be all for us. And so then, in other words, I have found places and spaces for us to be a volunteer under somebody else's leadership.
Yep.
And that's huge. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about serving outside of our regular roles. And by the way, I'll put it this way. There's nothing to prove, there's nothing to hide, and there's nothing to fear. If you aren't there and you're out in public or podcast land someplace and you're like, hey, listen, I am barely hanging on, lots of grace for you. This is not an expectation that you go out and burn it at the other end of the candle. Just chill, listen in, see if you can be inspired by this. Well, here's the deal. We try to define things on the podcast. We have 3 big buckets: define it, develop it, and then let's do it. So from a definition standpoint, what is a definition of serving? Well, I looked this up. Simple. It's helping. Serving is helping. And so all of a sudden, a lot of people in your church, or a lot of people when I was a full-time kids pastor, they were volunteering and serving the children's ministry, or they were helping serve me by helping facilitate this grand thing that we had going on. That's great. But together, Preston, you and I have learned the value of serving other people and other organizations and not just having this be my one and only job. And so you have some very unique places and spaces that you have found yourself serving. They are beautiful. We're going to get to those. And so we kind of define serving. Any other thoughts that you have about how we would define this term serving?
No, I think you hit the nail right on the head with simplifying it, giving it a synonym of helping.
Yeah.
There are lots of ways that you can serve, but I think that hits the nail on the head. Is perfect.
Yeah. And so the deal that we're looking at right now is, what does the Bible say about serving or helping other people? Well, the Bible actually has quite a bit to say about this. And the biggest one is serve one another with the gifts that you have been given, right? 1 Peter chapter 4, with the multifaceted gifts in the kingdom, they've been distributed liberally. I have some gifts, you have some gifts, serve the body. The end of story. And so I'm serving the body through some unique ways, but I do want to go out and serve another body, the bigger body. Mm-hmm. And one way that my family and I have done this, it's been fun. Every month we go to the largest and longest lasting, which by the way, it isn't that big, but it is the largest, and it's the longest term food bank in the state of Iowa. It's called Bidwell. It's been around for well over 150 years, if you can believe that. So it's been amazing. Food bank that's been around for a really long time. And it's set up, Preston, like a grocery store. And so
I love that.
And so giving people a sense of personal dignity, it's set up like a grocery store that you get to go through aisles and you get to pick stuff off. And it's not huge, but here's an interesting thing. My job once a month is to go in and stock shelves. I am a shelf stocker.
Why not?
And it's so fulfilling to me. Why? Because my manic sense of order and organization, I'm actually able to walk in and it looks like chaos. There's tons of holes. And then I show up. And then when I'm done, I'm like, look at this. And it's like this really bizarre feeling because they have these huge crates in the back and these huge pallets that are filled with packaged food. And then we have to break them open and go stock them. And all of a sudden, it's just like this super weird thing where all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I found the black beans and I undo them and I fill up the black beans and I'm like, nobody else touched the black beans. So it's this sense, and the lady who's there, she tears up almost every time and she says, you have no idea the number of man hours that you've just saved us by coming in and doing this. Because it's just brainless work, but boy, does it feel good when you're going. It is better, the Bible says, to give than to receive.
Yeah. Yeah, there's another great verse about generosity. Ironically, I'm speaking on generosity tonight.
That's awesome.
But there's this great verse in Acts that talks about the early church and how they sold all of their possessions so that they could give it so they could essentially take care of people who are in need. Yeah. And I think what you're doing would absolutely drive me nuts.
Would it really?
But it would absolutely drive me nuts. I would prefer to pay more money to go to a store that is manicured.
Yeah, and already preset.
I all but have an anxiety attack when I go to a yard sale or a thrift store. I can't stand it.
Dude,
I can't stand it.
This is what it is. And by the way, it is a cramped facility. I mean, it's the biggest that exists, but it's cramped. It is, and they're trying. Here's the thing, man. There's so many organizations out there that I would call them parachurch organizations. They are not a church, but they are a nonprofit seeking to do good things in the name of God.
Yeah.
And they are highly understaffed. They are highly underfunded, but they're doing really good work. And so all of a sudden you walk in and it is chaos. Trust me, you would hate it.
Oh, I would hate it. My father-in-law, he's actually in our food bank right now. We give away food every Sunday and Wednesday.
Yeah.
And he is your type. He will organize for hours. His garage is absolutely insane.
I love this guy.
My garage is a mess, but his garage, he's got a drawer for everything.
Yeah.
Everything has a place. I have no idea where anything is, but if I ask for a very specific size, I don't know, like screwdriver, he knows exactly where it is, and he's probably got 4 of them.
Right.
But so he would, and that's what he's doing right now. He's retired, but he's serving, he's helping. Why? Because we need it.
That's right.
We were just on vacation, and before we even got to vacation, I had told you, but he fell in an ice cream shop, and he's got a couple staples in his head over at our food pantry, our food bank, and he's giving out food, and he's
doing the thing.
And he's doing his thing.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is that what I love about Bidwell, where we serve every single month, is they have sought to set it up so that it has the greatest level of human dignity for people who have no money to buy any food. And I think that is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I love that. And it's similar to the way that we have ours set up. Now, we don't have the space for people to walk through, but it's like a walk-up window. Yeah. And our guests get to come up and say, I need this and that and that. And my father-in-law is behind the desk, and he's just putting food. He's bagging groceries for them. And you know what? A small team.
Yeah. And the other thing too, that I think is extremely important is that I watched this gal, Missy, who runs this place, and she has a pastor's heart. And there she is shepherding. She always is telling us stories about this person who came in, and here's their drama. Here's their story of poverty. And she is holistically ministering to them, not just providing them food. So those are beautiful things. I don't want to make this about necessarily just a food bank. I want to turn the corner and talk about a unique way that you are serving with. I got my manic sense of organization, right? But you happen to have this gift and this passion for security. And you're doing amazing things. So tell us how you're serving other people outside of your church job.
Well, I've got the security company, which is a for-profit company, but we also started a nonprofit that's it's linked to my profit business.
Of course it is.
It has to be a complete separate business, but it's really kind of a department of our company, and we call it Guardians. And what we do is essentially provide close personal protection to victims of violence on their day of court. So a lot of people think specifically battered women or battered wives, women that have been abused, but it's not. Ironically, it's not solely women. It is, I'll say it is mostly women, but what we do is we pick them up from home. We take them to court, sit with them in court, make sure they're safe. Then we get them home, clear the house when we get them home, and
to make sure nobody's there, because in this situation, when a battered wife, her husband is 15 layers of ticked off that this is going down. He has tried his best to coerce her into never saying a thing. And she said, you know what? I've had enough. I'm coming forward about this. And that's a very scary thing. And so all of a sudden, you are providing physical protection for that woman. Not only that, you're also providing her psychological protection as she is walking to the courthouse. I don't have to fear my husband's going to jump out of the bushes and attack me. And that's crazy.
Yeah. That's the service more than the actual physical protection. The bigger service is giving these ladies or men the confidence the courage to stand up for themselves, to put a stop to the abuse, to hold these abusers accountable. And so what we've seen in the couple of years that we've been doing this is really the biggest benefit is an emotional or psychological benefit than actual physical.
And
but
so
we
watch
are
this.
facing.
You're
ahead.
helping. You're helping.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? That means that you are serving this person and you're being a support that they themselves they don't have on their own. They may not have the mental constitution that's been broken down by the abuse. And you're there to support and hold them up and go, we got your arms, we got your back. You're absolutely fine. You can walk in with confidence and dignity. And I got goosebumps, dude. I'm so proud of you. Well
Thanks,
done.
man.
How did you come up with this idea, by the way?
It's kind of a longer story, but I'll give you a shorter version. I grew up as, I was a pastor's kid, never got in fights. I've never hit anybody without a glove on. But when I'd been married for maybe 2 years at the time, and I was at my in-laws' house, and my father-in-law had the news on, and out of nowhere, this story came on the news about a young lady who had been murdered by an ex-boyfriend. And that young lady happened to be a pretty close friend of mine from back in middle school.
You were shocked.
Absolutely shocked. I mean, traumatized is actually the right word, because the trauma, sometimes we're traumatized and we shell up and we become afraid of the world and we isolate, and we take on all of these like negative characteristics. In my case, I got afraid because I think most men, or a lot of men at least, think that we can fight, think that we can defend ourselves and defend our families. But if we're really honest about it, fighting,
we're ill prepared.
Yeah, fighting is a bit of an art. And so I kind of threw myself into learning how to fight. I started doing jiu-jitsu, started training Muay Thai, and then I got into mixed martial arts and combat sports. Yeah. Not because I liked it, but it was because I needed to prove that I could defend myself.
So in other words, you didn't want to be caught unaware.
Correct. I wanted to put myself into a bad position where there was some control, right? So like it's one-on-one versus somebody a relative size. Yes. And then there's also a referee to make sure things don't get out of hand. So I wanted to put myself in a position where I would know, and I'd give myself some confidence because I've been in some fights. I know that I can survive this. Then I fought for a number of years, and I got to a place where I kind of felt convicted in that I started fighting because I wanted to learn a skill, and I wanted to know that I could survive violence. But then I got to a point where I was just selling tickets, and
as an MMA fighter,
right? As an MMA fighter, Muay Thai fighter.
And so in your mind, if I can jump ahead, like I'm very inspired by this. Like you all of a sudden were like, "That's not enough. That's not enough." Like what is really a deeper meaning? I respect that you dug deeper and were like, "How could this serve the greater good?" Good for you.
Well, yeah, I appreciate. I don't know that like I knew that I was like consciously trying to serve the greater good. I just know that I knew when I started why I started. And
because of that girl.
I started because of Claire, and I felt like I needed to get back on that track. And at that point, I had already kind of started the security company, and I had the certification to do close personal protection, what most people would call like bodyguarding. Sure. And, I don't know how the idea came about, other than I was driving down the road and just giving some credit to the Holy Spirit of, hey, you should do this. Because I didn't like sit down with a notebook and brainstorm. It was just like, why don't you do this? And
that's such a cool story. It's such a cool idea. And so you've served a lot of these people. This is a nonprofit, meaning that people contribute to this and they say, this is a good idea. This is a worthy cause. I can get behind that. I might not be able to protect, but I can give. And so you are a para-church organization. You're doing good work in the name of God outside of the church. Mm-hmm.
And people know that we are a faith-based company. If you go to our website, spartaninv.com, like you're gonna find that we're faith-based. We are believers.
Yes,
it's so funny. A large majority of my officers that are employed by our company all go to my church. It's so funny, but so yeah, people understand. Like we've got our current Guardians client is actually goes to my church now. She comes every Wednesday.
So she has a court date, let's say, and she's going to be flanked on her right and possibly to her left with trained security guards providing protection, but also emotional support.
Yeah. So I think that's the big difference between like what we do. And there's another organization that's like, they're like bikers, I think. Yeah. They're like these tough looking guys. And the big difference between what we do and what they do, and I'm not knocking what they do.
Of course.
But what we do is we're professional close personal protection specialists.
You're not just a tough guy.
Not just a tough guy. And the problem with that is when you don't have the soft skills coupled with the hard skills, meaning like you don't know how to talk to people and you don't know how to de-escalate situations.
I mean,
when you're just a tough guy.
We're getting into lead security right now.
Yeah.
Like you train us through lead security that it's really about the soft skills. It's not about being a brute, what did you call it? Knuckle dragger.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't be a knuckle dragger. You want to have the soft skills. I've been in this industry for years. And I've been fighting for 14 years. Yeah. And I've never had to hit somebody without a glove on. You have those soft skills. Soft skills, the situational awareness. If you can pay attention to what's going on around you,
you can diffuse situations
before they ever come up. I'm not saying there's never going to be a reason to lay your hands on somebody, to meet violence with violence. I'm not saying that violence is never the answer, but I feel like violence is rarely the answer.
That's so good,
if we're paying attention, we can get away from having to use violence.
And so it is actually the most intelligent form of security. Mm-hmm. It's literally using your brain in holding back the idea that you have the brawn to completely destroy this person. For the record, your last MMA opponent, 25 seconds and they were done. 25 seconds, you took them out. So you have the capacity, to X someone in 25 clean seconds. But by and large, you use your brain, not your brawn, to de-escalate situations.
Yeah, so technically that was a Muay Thai fight. But yes, I finished him in 25 seconds.
You broke his leg. Moving on. Let me say it, not you. You're a very humble guy. But, back to this idea of serving. It's very interesting. Like, I got goosebumps. This is a very personal thing to me because, every one of us have these really, really, really bizarre things. And here's one for me. Like, if you're watching this on YouTube, that's the periodic table. What a nerd. I love the periodic table. How bizarre is that? I mean, does the kingdom of God have any level of hope, right, for somebody who loves the periodic table? Well, here's what I got to say. The kingdom of God does have an opportunity for that. Why? Because I've taken my love for the Lord and my bizarre passion for the periodic table, and I have a thing that serves other people. It's called The Amazing Chemistry Show, Science VBS, and it's the gospel's being shared to thousands and thousands of people. That's fantastic. You, Preston, happen to have a passion for security. That's not everybody's passion. The body is very unique,
No.
but you also have a desperate love for God. You partner those together, and now you're serving outside of your normal role in a very unique way. So the question that I have for the podcast listeners, you got something, don't you? You're
Everybody
weird.
has something.
Hey, podcast listener, you're just as weird as Preston and I. He loves security. I love the periodic table. What's your thing? I guarantee, submit it to the Lord, and it can become a pathway by which you serve others. Now, we don't have too much time left, but what I want to say, Preston, is that you're doing something unique to stop human trafficking and the darkest of dark things.
Yeah.
Share briefly about that.
Yeah, so we're my business partner and I are teaming up with an organization in Texas, who it's a Christian organization, and what they do is they go rescue kids that are being trafficked on the border from Mexico into the United States. And I know, like, this isn't a political thing. This is a kids thing.
God bless you.
The facts are, children are being trafficked in and out of the United States. It's fact. That's not Democratic or Republican. And
guess what? It is not Democratic or Republican. It is something God hates.
Mm-hmm.
And you're helping to stop that. And so that's using your skills, that's using your abilities at the border. You're sacrificing your time in order to help this cause with the random skills and abilities that you have. I want to make mention to anybody who's listening, if you wanted to jump back to episode 164 of the Lead Ministry podcast, it's a whole listing of how our family has served in a lot of different capacities, whether it's serving and helping the people who lead a house of women who've come out of the sex trade. And so our family went and did hard yard work and cleaned all of their cars and cleaned all of their windows, because the lady that's running that place, she doesn't have time to do that dumb stuff. She's got big things on her plate. So our family stepped in and did that. That is outside of what we would normally do. We went to the Crisis Pregnancy Center. We did basically the same thing, hard yard work, and cleaned every window and cleaned every car. And they were blessed because of it, because they had other higher callings, but those dumb jobs needed to be done. And so we stepped in and helped. And so what I want to say to the podcast listener, there are plenty of good organizations that are around you that are seeking to do the good work of God, and they need help. Don't sequester yourself, and don't box yourself out and say, you know what, my service to the Lord is my 9-to-5 job. It just happens to be spiritual in nature. There are places and spaces that you can actually volunteer and jump into a volunteer role. Now, Preston, here's the funny thing. With some of these different organizations, I learned a little bit about being a better pastor because when I was serving under certain organizations, they were completely prepared for me to show up and serve. And then there were other organizations who were not prepared to receive me or my family to serve. And guess what? That was painful. And I thought, well, far be it from me. I don't want anybody to walk in and have a crummy serving experience. Clean up your stuff, Josh. And so by volunteering someplace else, it did tee me up to do a better job.
That's excellent.
That's excellent. So one final thing that is mentioned, I believe, on episode 164 is also our church that we attend right now, and I'm an elder at, or just got done being an elder. Every fifth Sunday, we completely cancel church. We do not have church services. There is no worship band. There is no preaching. There is no message. Nobody's filling the coffee pots. The church doors are literally closed, and we are not the church gathered. We're the church dispersed. And all people go out and serve other God-fearing, seeking to do good in the community, biblically based nonprofits. And so then all of our church and all of our families are dispersed and serving every fifth Sunday. We have one entire person on staff. She does other things as well, but one of her main roles is coordinating and organizing such an adventure. Isn't that crazy?
I love that.
It's super cool. Well, Preston, thank you. Go ahead. You were going to say.
I was about to say, it's crazy just because it's not normal. but
Right.
crazy doesn't mean bad. I think it's good.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that our senior pastor, he stays behind at the church because there's always a couple of people who forgot that this was that week. And so, number one, people who are regulars are like, oh my word, yes, we'll go to Bidwell right now. We'll go to or we'll go to this other thing or these other places that we're serving. That's great. But there's two other people that show up, and they're both guests. And guest number one, they show up in their Sunday duds, and they're super frustrated. We tried to get here on time, and you're not even having church. And they're frustrated, they're angry, and they drive away. And our senior pastor says, they're probably not going to fit here anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then he said there's a second group of people. They show up in their Sunday duds, and he explains why we're not holding church. And they're like, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard of my life. I cannot wait to come back. And so those are the two people, and it's been a beautiful thing to serve with people. We've done homeless encampment cleanups. We've done, the list goes on of, making beds for the homeless shelter. And what an exposure for our children too, right? To see these things exist. So Preston, man, we could go on for a super, super long time. I got a lot of respect for you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the Guardians thing. Thank you for all the good work you're doing, buddy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, you bet, man. Well, gang, this has been just another episode of the Lead Ministry Podcast, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Get out there and serve somebody, would you? We'll catch you guys later.